Here again with another Breaking Bad Season 2 episode review video. Before I get into that though, pretty important. If you weren't caught up to the point where I am in rewatching or watching Breaking Bad, or you're just not entirely sure, then you definitely need to take the initiative and pay attention to the episode's title, which of course I'll mention, as well as put in the description. If that happens to be the case and you're not caught up, it would be my recommendation that you don't watch this video any further to avoid any potential spoilers. And for those of you that are wondering, I've watched Breaking Bad many times. Join me on the journey of rewatching this show and discussing it in the comment section. This will be Breaking Bad, Season 2, Episode 8. The title of this episode is called Better Call Saul. And this will be my review, reaction, recap after just finishing rewatching the episode. Badger is sitting on a bench. Of course, Badger's real name is Brandon Mayhew. And then a man played by DJ Qualls from The New Guy and other various movies sits next to him and asks, "Hey, are you selling?" He wants a teenth if he was selling. Badger points out a brown van and says, "It's a cop's van." It's pretty obvious and all that. So they banter back and forth about this character being a cop, which I don't remember the character's name, so I'll just say DJ Qualls' character. And then he eventually tells Badger, by holding his hand up, "I'm not a police officer." And so Badger then does sell him the teenth that he asked for, and money exchanges, and it turns out that, of course, he is a cop. And Badger, otherwise known as Brandon Mayhew, is arrested. And we see a Better Call Saul commercial that airs on Jesse's plasma TV as it's finally found a signal. And we also find out that Jesse and Jane slept together on his floor. And Jesse wants to light up with Jane because he finds out that she knows that he's been smoking. But she warns him that her dad won't be happy about it if he finds out. And then Jesse gets a bombshell. Well, not necessarily a bombshell, but he finds out that Jane is actually in recovery. She shows him her 18-month chip. And then we see Skylar is going to work on a Saturday. And she's dressed pretty nice and looks pretty nice. And Walt is somewhat surprised by this. Marie calls and starts to leave a message on the answering machine, sounding like there's a major problem. So Walt picks up and, "Marie, what's going on?" So we see that Walt has went over to Hank and Marie's and finds out about what happened to Hank in El Paso with the tortoise and the guy's head being on the tortoise, Danny Trejo's character, and then blowing up. And so Walt talks to Hank about his trauma regarding this. And then Walt mentions to Hank that ever since his cancer diagnosis, he actually sleeps just fine. As Jesse splits the money between him and Walt, it's of course noticed by Walt that it's a bit short, $3,000 short, and Jesse says, "Don't freak, Badger hasn't kicked in his full amount yet, but he's doing an all-nighter, and you'll get it." So Walt is not happy by this, of course, so Jesse calls Badger, but Badger doesn't answer. And then Jesse calls Combo, and remember that Jesse is looked upon as this badass now after supposedly killing Spooge in Peekaboo. So he uses that, like, "Don't fuck with me, Combo. Where's Badger?" Not exactly with his words, but, threatens him. And then Combo reveals to Jesse that Badger got busted. He's in jail. Hank goes back to work at the DEA. Steve Gomez tells Hank, "We got someone who was caught selling the blue meth." Badger is questioned by DJ Qualls' character, and then Badger's lawyer arrives, and of course it is the great Saul Goodman. And Saul tells Badger that he wants a check for over $4,000. And Badger asks if Saul's going to get him off. Of course, Saul makes a funny joke about getting him off. And then Saul says he's going to give him the best criminal defense money can buy. And then Saul talks to Hank and Steve Gomez. Hank tells Saul his commercials suck ass. Walt doesn't like the idea of them hiring Saul Goodman to represent Badger, and Jesse tells Walt, yo, Saul Goodman got Emilio from season 1 off a few times when, in fact, Emilio was dead to rights. And then someone has to meet Saul to, get him to give it legal representation to Badger. So Walt flips a coin between him and Jesse, and Walt loses. So Walt has to talk to Saul, and he tells Walt. So Walt goes there as Mr. Mayhew and not Walter White. And Saul tells him that his real name is McGill, which actually I did not catch in the number of times that I've watched Breaking Bad. I don't remember that line. Maybe it's because I've obviously, since the last time I watched Breaking Bad, I watched all of Better Call Saul, but I didn't catch that. But that's, obviously in Better Call Saul, this character is actually named James or Jim McGill. And it's an interesting story. So it's the first time out of the 8 to 10 times that I've watched this show that I caught that. And then Saul says he is going to get, Badger is going to get out in no time. Walt's, of course, pretending to be Mr. Mayhew, Badger's pop. And then Saul tells Walt that the DEA is involved, so it's a little bit more confusing. So Walt offers $10,000 to Saul for no talking or making a deal with the DEA, and Saul declines. Jesse asks Walt what they're going to do about it, and Walt and Jesse actually kidnap Saul Goodman. And Walt has a gun pointed at Saul, and it's suggested by Saul that they just kill Badger. And Jesse says, we're not killing Badger, yo. So Walt, during this, and they have ski masks on, by the way, if you didn't know already, Walt starts to cough. And he did that in his meeting, pretending to be Mr. Mayhew with Saul Goodman. So Saul recognizes that it's Mr. Mayhew. So Walt takes off his ski mask, and Saul wants $1 in his pocket from each of them so he can have, or so they can have, attorney-client privilege. Walt gives him $1, and Jesse only has a 5. So a 5 is good, and Jesse gives Saul Goodman the 5, and then Jesse finally takes his ski mask off at Walt. Just go ahead and do what he says. And Saul says, so someone's going to prison. It's just a matter of who. Hank wants a name from Badger, and he wants Badger to describe the guy. He's like, he's old, he's as bald as you. And Saul says for a price, Jimmy will go to prison for you. And I can't remember what his official name is, but this is a guy that likes to go to prison for a price. So $80,000 is the price and a pound of the blue meth. So a plan is set into action, and Badger will give Jimmy the meth, and he'll go to prison instead of Badger, of course, or Badger tricking on either Walt or Jesse. But this Jimmy character was late. Another guy sat next to Badger, and Badger starts to start the deal because Badger doesn't know who this guy is yet. So Badger starts to try to sell him the stuff, and this guy's like, "What? He's doesn't know what the hell's going on." And then Jimmy shows up late and sits on the bench away from them. And so Walt tells Jesse to get out of the car as they're watching this. And Walt wants to create a distraction. So he goes to Hank. Hey, how's it going? And Hank's like, hey, Walt, we're busy here. As DJ Qualls' character is actually recording the for evidence. He's recording the drop-off or the exchange. And Walt just keeps talking to Hank, in the way of what they're recording as Jesse walks by and says, wrong bench, and then just keeps walking. So everything works. Eventually, Badger goes to the right bench, talks to the Jimmy character. Jimmy gives him the meth. Badger gives him the money, or vice versa, whoever had what. And then this Jimmy character that likes to go to prison or jail is arrested. And everything worked out great, even though it was a little bit worrisome with what happened with the guy the one guy sitting next to Badger. And then Jesse has bought a bed, and Jane has let the delivery guys in. And then Jesse starts making out with Jane. Walt's grading papers at the school, and Saul Goodman stops in the school. And Walt's like, what the hell's going on? How? And he tells Walt, it's too easy to track him down. He says even drug dealers need lawyers. Saul Goodman says he has the right product. Anything that gets the DEA's panties in this big of a bunch, he's onto something. Saul wants to be a silent partner, and he tells Walt if he wants to make more money and keep the money that he makes, better call Saul. Ending the episode. So really good episode of Breaking Bad. Obviously, we get the introduction of Saul Goodman, who at first when I watched Breaking Bad, there was a lot of characters that I didn't like. Saul Goodman being one of them. Obviously, I like him much more now. He's still not my favorite. Definitely not top 2, but somewhere after the second, because I like Walt and a character we're about to meet, Mike Ehrmantraut, very soon here. So I liked it. I'm going to score the episode an 8.8 out of 10. The character of the episode, of course, is going to be Saul Goodman, because better call Saul. And those are my thoughts and opinions on this episode of Breaking Bad. Of course, in Better Call Saul, spoiler alert, when we finally get the introduction of, spoiler alert, of Walt and Jesse in Better Call Saul, that episode is called Breaking Bad. So that's pretty cool. I think it's season 11, or I'm sorry, season 6, episode 11, if I remember, memory serves me correctly. So that was pretty cool. So anyway, you've heard what I have to say. Now, of course, it's your turn. If you're a fan of Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, or even El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie, and want to help me out with the YouTube algorithm, please make sure that you're Hulk smashing that like button. It goes a long way. It does help out the channel and helps out with the algorithm. Share the video with a friend. Put this video on any one of your social media platforms. Don't forget to sound off in the comment section about what your thoughts are on this episode. What would you rate the episode? And whom, if you had to choose, would be the character of the episode? And then, last but certainly not least, don't forget to hit that sub button. Subscribe to the channel. You're watching the video anyway. Join the team, show your damn support, and be a part of something special. And JDev will return.